Get the fuck up. Simon says, get the fuck up. Throw your hands in the sky.
The trend in powerlifting seems to be going away from taking 1 RMs in the gym. There's some strong motherfuckers doing it. Looking back on my competitive career, do you think doing more doubles and triples could have helped you progress more? Me personally, no. Because I used a conjugate method for the last 10 years of my career. Before that, I used different linear and nonlinear type of programs. So I'm only going to answer this based upon conjugate. And the chance of injury is always higher. When I'm looking at this and I see 1 RM, I'm thinking max effort work. The chance of injury is always higher doing a double or a triple than it is a single. You know, I've personally only been hurt once doing a single, and that was in a meet. And in the gym, never. I mean, that was something that Louis kind of drilled into us a lot, is just because, you know, you're doing the max effort work and the single feels good, don't go ahead and do a double or a triple, rack it, and then work up to a little bit heavier single. And because the chance of injury is less. Why is the chance of injury less when most people would say that statement's false? The chance of injury is less because fatigue doesn't come into play as much. When you do a single, everything's tight, you're mentally ready, everything is technically probably as sound as it's going to be. Now when you hit the double, fatigue's already set in from the first rep. So when you're dealing with maximal weights, 1 inch, or not even that, you know, 1/4 of an inch can be the difference between not tearing a pack and tearing a pack. So if it's max effort bench work and you start breaking off into doing doubles and triples, the chance of injury, in my opinion, increases significantly. Max effort work, there is a trend, and it's kind of always been the trend of people doing triples and, you know, and maybe singles, and it kind of depends upon how they feel working up. I can see that if you're working up and things don't feel right, and then doing a triple that's not maximal, but sub-maximal. I think, you know, before we can really have a discussion about this, there's so many different definitions on what constitutes maximal, sub-maximal, super-maximal, circum-maximal. You know, I've seen, just in sub-maximal alone, I've seen definitions of that range from, you know, 50% to 95%. Well, then what the fuck is max? You know, so it's, the way that I would define it, and the way it's always been defined to me, is maximal is going to be anything from 90% and above. So if it's a triple, you're probably going to stay out of the 95% or out of the 90% range. Even though you may be able to do 90% for a triple, that really depends on what somebody's strength speed is, which is another conversation all in itself. But with max effort work, where a lot of people make mistakes is, it's gym training, it's not a meet. So if you're doing max effort work, your mental state should not be a competitive max state. It should be a training state, which is gonna knock the weight down, depending upon the individual, 5 to 10%, pretty easy. You know, if people are hitting, you know, ammonia and getting fucking all ape shit for max effort work every single time they're doing it, they're gonna burn out from that. They're gonna burn out from it really fucking fast, because that's too much stimulus for the body to be able to overcome and to super compensate from. Now, if they're doing it with a normal training state, then that maximal weight's gonna be lowered, and it's gonna be a real maximal weight instead of being something that I consider to be super maximal or even circummaximal to a certain degree. So that's one mistake people are making with the max effort work, is they're getting too fucking wound up about it. The other mistake I think they're making is sticking with the same exercise too long. You know, if you're an advanced lifter, you should be changing the exercise every single time you come in, and then putting some thought into how you're rotating those exercises. A beginner or intermediate may be able to stay with the same exercise for 2 to 3 weeks. But even with that, I try to get those exercises personally with people that I work with, changing every week to some degree. Even if it's going from a 3 board to a 2 board, if we want to try to bring up the board press, it's changing every single week. And that makes it easier to recover from and easier to make strength gains from. When you're sticking with the same thing for 2-3 weeks, at that percentage, it's too hard on you. And the third thing is the rotation of exercises. Max effort work is to teach you how to strain, and is to teach you how to strain under time. Those are the number one, number two goals of max effort work. Secondary to that would be, neuromuscular coordination, which kind of is the same thing as teaching you how to strain under time, and bringing up weak points, which really doesn't need to be addressed with max effort work unless it's a higher advanced lifter and you're trying to deal with a certain position in the lift that you want to build up. But for most people, it's just teaching them how to strain with something that's going to have some type of dynamic correspondence that will carry over to the lift that they're actually trying to train. In that regard, beginners should have a shorter list, 6 to 8 movements, or an advanced person could have a very extensive list, because it's not really about that number, it's about what's happening within that rep that you're straining it. Now, from a sub-maximal standpoint, is there advantage of doubles and triples over max effort work? That becomes a programming question. If you're doing max effort work, it should be tied with dynamic effort work. And then the repetition method will be filled in with the accessory stuff. That would be a concurrent model. If you're using a block model, then yes, the doubles and the triples are going to come more into play, because you're training different strength qualities in each block instead of trying to put it all together. If you try to put together, dynamic work, max effort work, and sub-max work with that, where the fuck is it going to go? You can spread it out over 10 days and try to do that, but that's not going to be optimal. So if you're going to put the triples and that in there, that would normally take the place of max effort work or the dynamic effort work based upon somebody's strength, speed, or based upon if somebody's more explosive than they are strong. If they're really explosive, then they can probably pull off dynamic work for 3 to 4 weeks, maybe 6, and be able to maintain the quality. That's where they could do sub-max work within there. If they're really fucking slow and their explosive strength sucks, then I wouldn't personally pull the dynamic work out. That's where I would replace the max work with the sub-max work. So I'm trying to answer the question in multiple different ways, because I don't know specifically the context of the question, and that's what gets difficult with a lot of these questions, and really with anybody that you're asking questions to, because without the context to know what somebody even considers to be maximal, it makes it really hard, or what they consider to be sub-maximal makes it really hard. When I read 2 to 3 repetitions, I'm thinking somewhere between 85 and maybe 95 at most % range. Other people could be thinking much lower than that because of what they've been taught. So I kind of stumbled through it. Hope it helps you.